Hello, my lovelies. Welcome back to another movie confession. Today I'm going to be talking about paranormal horror movies specifically. Since this genre is so big, this video may actually be really long, and I do apologize in advance. There are probably going to be spoilers as well, so fair warning. Let's just get into it so we don't waste too much time. I'm not a huge fan of The Exorcist. I know it's a cult classic. It just doesn't have the same effect that it did when I first saw it. Granted, I was 8 years old. It was one of my first horror movies. Besides it. It was also the director's cut, which I think is far more terrifying than the standard edition. Because you have Regan crab walking down the stairs, blood pours out of her mouth in front of all the partygoers. That scene alone gave me nightmares and terrified me so bad, and it was the beginning of the movie. I remember waking up in the middle of the movie. I somehow passed out because I buried myself under the blanket after seeing that scene. And I somehow woke up during the interview scene, and I heard her disturbing, demonic voice. I know it's in the standard edition too, but that scene alone, mixed with the crab walking, I was so terrified that night. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking demons were everywhere. It was a horrible, horrible movie for me, for a starter. I tried watching it again. I saw the standard edition, and it just didn't have that same effect, that gut-wrenching terror that it did when I first saw this movie. I did read the book, and I thought it was far better than the movie, which isn't really surprising. A lot of times movies are not as good as the book because they have to leave stuff out and what have you. My favorite possession movies, though, are The Exorcism of Emily Rose and The Rite. Although The Rite is mostly because of Anthony Hopkins. He's one of my favorite actors. I thought he did such a phenomenal job portraying the priest being possessed. I mean, the facial expressions mixed with the tone of voice, he sold that character. The Exorcism of Emily Rose, though, for me, is my favorite, though. And it's probably because I find court cases fascinating. I remember the expert witness testimony, and I thought it was interesting because they used cultural beliefs in possession. So I really liked that because I love history. I didn't care for the Amityville horror movies or The Omen. I know The Omen's a cult classic, same with the Amityville, but the Amityville horror movies, for me, I've only seen the first one, and I've seen it a couple times. I've also seen the remake. But the original, for me, it seemed over the top for me to believe it. It's just too much being thrown at that movie. The remake, I don't know. I didn't like it. I didn't know that Ryan Reynolds is in it, and he's an incredible actor. He just didn't work for that movie, I think. Or maybe it was the writers. I think it was a mix of both, maybe, or just the writers in general. The Omen, I thought was boring. I think the kid is terrifying. I mean, he's creepy. I'll give you that, but the movie itself was really boring. I've seen the first and second one. Found footage films, I'm not a fan of. So movies like Paranormal Activity, Host, The Taking of Deborah Logan, The Blair Witch Project, and others like it, they don't scare me. And for me, if a movie doesn't scare me, it fails. Unless it has a really good story or the characters are funny, like Freddy. Freddy is hilarious, so I love those movies just because of him. And the story is interesting, too. Candyman, great story. Didn't scare me, but great story. So, for me, the movies just fell short. And the whole point for horror movies, in my opinion, is to get scared. That's the whole reason I watch them. I want terror. Unless it has a good story. Then I can throw all that out. Or the characters are funny or interesting. I can't say the Blair Witch Project didn't scare me, though, because I saw it when I was 10. And my 10-year-old imagination went wild to create what I thought would be chasing them, because you didn't see the witch. So I couldn't understand what was so terrifying to these adults. So I created the most terrifying thing I could think of, and that is what made the movie more terrifying for me. Now, the movies, like, I shouldn't get there yet. The Host, for me, had a great concept. It was great for the pandemic. It made Skype into a horror movie using spirits and ghosts and stuff. I just felt like I had seen it before and it was missing something. It wasn't a horrible movie. It just wasn't my taste. The fact that it was an independent film, though, gives it a little bit more credit for me. The movies that I did like that are found footage films is Death of a Ghost Hunter, and another one that I can't remember the name of for the life of me. It was about a group of investigators that show up in a haunted house to investigate it, obvious. Everyone dies except I think 2 people. The police are called. They investigate the surviving members only to find that one of them is being possessed or something. If you know the name of this movie, please tell me in the comments, because I've been looking for this movie and I want to see it again. But the reason why these 2 movies resonated more with me is because they're paranormal investigators who you would never suspect something bad happening to. Like entities causing pain and suffering to them, because it never happens in movies. I mean, take Ed and Lorraine Warren. Nothing really attacks them specifically. I mean, except for maybe the nun. But for the most part, investigators are usually safe. So I liked that it was different. And they are older. They're before the Conjuring films. The Shining was incredible. Of course, I like that movie. A lot of people do. I will say the book is far more terrifying. I haven't been able to finish it. It scares me too much. I'm hoping someday I'll gain enough courage to actually finish the book, because I want to know what happens and how it's different from the movie. But until that time, I'm just going to base everything off the movie. The ending for the movie is still problematic for me because it's confusing. I don't know how Jack is in that old photo from the 1920s at the end of the film. Unless it's an old ancestor or something. I just don't get it. If you have an understanding of it, please let me know in the comments, because I'm curious to know what the significance of that is. Overall, though, it's a creepy movie, especially the woman in room 237, or was it 217? I don't remember the number. Let me know in the comments, because I think it's one of those. 1408 I found hilarious. My best friend and I were cracking up in the theater, laughing from this movie, especially the spirit in the ventilation system. It reminded me too much of Smeagol, so I couldn't unsee it, and it just ruined the movie. The Others and The Sixth Sense were really creepy. However, after watching it the first time, you try watching it for like the second, third, maybe multiple times, but there's no suspense anymore. You know what happened. and you know what's going to happen. So there's no more questions. So I haven't seen them since the first time I watched them. The Ring movies, the Grudge movies, and Shudder all scared me the most. Mostly the American remakes. I found those movies a little more scary, except for the Shudder one. The Shudder remake I thought was absolutely terrible compared to the original. The Ring movies, what makes them so terrifying to me is that blue filter. It's just unnerving. It gives everything this ominous feel throughout the entire film. I thought they did a really good job with the possession scene for the second movie. That's freaked me out so bad. I have a fear of mirrors, so when he's taking the photos as she's coming towards him in the mirror, it freaked me so bad. I was so terrified. The Ring movies alone, the first one, I remember specifically, gave me horrible nightmares for months after watching that film. I don't know what it is with those films, but they are so unnerving. Rings even was a little creepy. Specifically I want to say the bathroom scene where Samara's trying to get in the bathroom and she's jiggling the door. It was kind of creepy. Along with the mirror scene. That was creepy too. However, the Japanese original for the Ring and the Grudge movies, I actually prefer the story of. It seems like a legend, like a ghost story, a real ghost story. So I found it more fascinating and entertaining. Same thing with the Shudder movie. I know that's not a Japanese movie, but I preferred it over the American remake. It just seemed more like a myth or legend from them. And I love old myths and legends. Plus, I also prefer foreign films over American films, specifically horror movies. I'm not entirely sure why. I think it's because of the myths and legends that usually are in the forefront compared to American movies. We kind of rely more on jump scares and other elements to give us that fear instead of using myths and legends. The Poltergeist movie I found terrifying. Granted, I was a child and I don't really remember much of it. I just remember the clown and the skeletons in the mud being unearthed. Thanks to that movie, I always wondered what might be buried under my house throughout my childhood. No matter what house I was in, I always wondered what might be buried down there. Which honestly made it more terrifying. The remake I thought was horrible. It just seemed rushed. Like they just threw everything at the wall as quick as possible. So I wasn't a huge fan. Mama was okay. It had some scary moments. Lights Out I thought was terrifying originally up until the ending. And mostly because the shadowy figure reminded me of the one I saw when I was a kid. I just hated that ending. The being Diana is a metaphor for depression, which the mother Sophie has. They made it seem like if you have a mental illness, you're a burden to your family and you don't deserve to live, which I thought was a horrible, horrible message to tell people. It just propagates the mental health stigma. So I have a huge problem with that ending. If you thought the ending was different than what I perceived, let me know in the comments. I'm curious to know what others think. The Babadook I found boring. I have not been able to finish it. I know some people love this movie. I just can't get into it. White Noise and Pulse, same thing. I just didn't care for those. I did finish those, though. I just didn't like them. They didn't scare me. and I didn't care for the story. Beetlejuice, for a kid-friendly horror movie, I thought was fun and quirky. I liked the cartoon better, though. My favorite scene, though, for the movie was the dinner party. I thought that was hilarious. I, of course, love the Ghostbusters. My favorite is the second one. The guy in the painting scared me as a kid. He was so creepy. Along with his associate, I thought he was unnerving. My other favorites is the Halloween tree and Coraline, although I don't think Coraline is really for kids, to be honest. So many seem to have nightmares and find it terrifying. And I can understand that. It has some really creepy elements. Now, here's an honest question for all of you. Does Ghost count as a horror movie? Because I remember seeing it with my mother, and the shadow creatures terrified me. I thought they were going to come after me when I was a kid. I haven't seen it since, so I don't really remember it. I just remember those. 13 Ghosts is another one I don't really remember. I only remember the spirit with the clear box on her head. I don't know if I liked it or not. It's probably a movie I'm going to have to revisit. Ghost Ship is another one of my favorites. I love the opening scene. I know it's brutal and gruesome, but for some reason, I love that scene. My other favorite is the flashback scene with the woman in red. When the hook goes through her and blood's dripping all over the floor and she's swinging it. That scene freaks me out a little bit, but I love the car that's in the background. Yeah, I'm a car nerd. I'll admit it. The Insidious films are incredible to me. I actually love all of them. Mostly because of Elise. I liked her personality and character. It was also different from other ghost stories for the further. It was interesting to see that a living being can actually go traverse through this spirit realm and gain insight and what have you. I thought it was a really cool concept. Sinister is another one of my favorites. I thought the concept was really creepy. You have this being that corrupts children into murdering their families in brutal ways, which was shocking. Both films were phenomenal, in my opinion. I know people either like them or they hate them. Or they like the first one and hate the second one. But the second one really showcased how the entity corrupts the children to create these intricate death plans for their family members. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't know how they would have been able to follow through with some of these intricate plans, because a lot of them you would need a lot of strength to actually do. I actually wish they made another one, but I don't know exactly where they could have gone, except maybe give more information about this Bug Ghoul character. I really wanted to know more. My favorite will always be Stay Alive, though. I know I talked about it in the last confession video. I just thought the entire concept was amazing because it used a video game as the conduit for Elizabeth Bathory to resurrect her. I thought the characters were great. They had some funny moments. I know they were your typical gamer stereotypes, but they were still great. I loved the kills. Most of the time you never saw them coming. I honestly was hoping that a game would have been created. There were talks of one being in the works, but I guess it just didn't work, or something happened, because obviously it didn't come to fruition. I really wanted to play it, though. This movie introduced me to Elizabeth Bathory. I never heard of her before, and I wanted to know who this person was. I was very curious about this person in real life. The movie has a lot of creepy elements that I enjoyed more than others. It's just a fun movie, and I strongly suggest people to watch it. The Conjuring films, I'm going to do in a separate video, because there's so many to cover within the universe. If you'd like me to talk about some of these movies further, let me know in the comments. If there's movies that I'm missing, let me know that you would have liked me to talk about. Let me know anything in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all take care until next time.